Kody Brown says, Meri's been a real blessing because she was a force in actually wanting us to be in the principle of plural marriage. Christine Brown says, yeah. You have to know that Janelle and I might have never married Kody, and we wouldn't have married him on our own. It took Meri pulling some strings, and Kody by himself would have never got done it. Kody Brown says, he's Meri bonded with Janelle and Christine before. It was a serious thought. In my mind, Meri's the bait. Kody asked Brown, how do you support everybody? Kody Brown says, well, I actually don't. We all. Kody Brown was asked. Everybody works, pretty much. 3 of us work right now. I'm looking for a job. Sister wives told the stars. It just happened. It just happened how they drove up. And we started talking. Meri and I started talking and then texting after that. So yeah, Kody Brown says, I'm not the only person in love with Robyn. Meri Brown says, I don't even know. I mean, there's just, yeah, you just have all the emotions and you just wonder when he's, going to give you the attention that he's given to her because she is the new thing. The new Christine Brown says, Meri's always been open to more wives. Always. There are times when she would talk to me about, Kody should probably get married again and things like that. And I'm like, no. Meri Brown says, so Kody and I were out one night, and we went over to a friend's house, and Robyn happens to be this friend's cousin. Robyn and I kind of clicked that night, and then later I told Kody how to go ask her to dance that I was good at. And about the time that we went to New York and we became public. Management told me into the office and said that they were going to release me from my position at work, and they basically fired me. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope everyone has having a wonderful day after watching these videos. Please hit the subscribe button and watching this video. I recently was watching a Patreon video of Mykelti, and she was watching season 2 episode 5, and they were going to Vegas. She was with her mom and her siblings, and Kody took Christine to Vegas. And during this episode, Kody speaks to Meri, and she tells him that she was passed up on a promotion for her job. And then she goes on to say that she had been fired from her previous job once the family went public, due to the fact that there she stated that she had been fired because she had sister wives, or that because she went public being a plural wife, and that her just simply being a public figure and being a polygamist made her employer fire her. She noted that she had been working with at-risk youth, and for several seasons she spoke about how she loved working with at-risk youth. At one point she even wanted to go back to school. To finish her degree, to continue working with at-risk youth, there was a lot of questions about what kind of at-risk youth program was she working at. Why was she fired? When was she fired? And in this live stream that Mykelti did, she actually defended these programs, these troubled teen programs, and said they're not all built the same. And that really Meri's firing had to do with the fact that they were concerned that parents would be upset that she was working there and that there might be complaints. I did some digging into the court records, and then I did some research to figure out more about the facility that she was working at, and it's a lot more complicated than it seems. I even had the opportunity to speak to the CEO of an advocacy group looking to not only tighten legislation around these types of programs and the troubled teen industry, but also to close them due to what they're doing to children. And Meri actually was working at a facility at the center of a lot of scrutiny, and they actually have their own page at. So let's talk about what she was doing, why she was fired, and I want to just show you what she said at the time. I had this great job that I loved, that I was good at. And about the time that we went to New York and we became public, management told me into the office and said that they were going to release me from my position at work, and they basically fired me. I felt a little bit like because of my lifestyle, you're letting me go. Really, I want to work with Rescue Wives debuted to the public on September 26, 2010, and after the first episode aired, the family went on a media blitz and were seen on episodes of the Today Show. They were interviewed by Joy Behar. They were interviewed by Anderson Cooper. They appeared on Oprah. They were literally being interviewed by all these different major outlets. and all of them were questioning them about their family structure, how they bring in people into the family. And on September 26th, the very first episode of the show aired where Meri admits to being, or Kody calls Meri the bait, effectively saying that it's Meri who lures people into the family and that she establishes relationships with women first. And then will introduce some to Kody and sort of encourage Kody to have a conversation with this person and consider this person for the family. After the show aired, Lehigh Police Department spoke with the media. KSL, in fact, and an article was published on September 28th that said the Lehigh Police. "We've been investigating the Brown family for weeks," it says. "I'm Lehigh man, and his 4 wives are now the subject of an investigation by police. They are also the stars of the newest reality show on the TLC network, which could take a new twist if they are prosecuted." Lehigh Police confirmed Tuesday that the Brown family has been under investigation for several weeks, ever since TLC announced the show would be in its fall lineup. But there are questions about what this investigation will actually lead to. Sunday night, TLC viewers were introduced to the Brown family in the debut of Sister Wives. Kody Brown and his 4 wives have opened up their home in Lehigh to cameras so that we can see what their lives together are like. The show certainly shed light on the situation, Lehigh Police Lieutenant Darren Paul said Tuesday. Paul said detectives are now involved in an investigation of the Browns looking at possible bigamy charges. The crime is a felony in Utah. Right now, we're looking at the bigamy aspect of it. As the investigation goes on, we'll see where it goes from there. KSLO News attempted to talk to the Browns at their home in Lehigh, but no one answered the door. On Tuesday, 10 years ago, Utah polygamist Tom Green was prosecuted for bigamy. And in what became news around the world, Green, who had what were called 5 spiritual wives, went on national television and was eventually charged with and convicted of bigamy. Case was different in that he was significantly older than his wives, whom he had married while they were still in their early teens. One of the women sent Green to prison for 5 years on a conviction of child R in the Browns case. They are all the same age range and began their relationships after becoming adults. 3 of the wives have been with the Browns for 16 years. A criminal prosecution is something they admitted could happen when deciding to do the show. And this is what they said. "Everyone still decided that the benefits of what we could do far outweighed the risk." Janelle told the news said last week Lehigh Police gave no time frame of when its investigations would be turned over to prosecutors. So the Browns made the decision to go public knowing full well that what they were doing in polygamy was a crime. They also were well aware of what was happening in the world with all of the ongoing charges related to Warren Jeffs and the men in the LDS. There had also been a raid at other church, a Christian church of Tony Alamo in the state of Arkansas. And polygamy was really under a very ugly microscope involving child brides and all these allegations of forced marriages, all of it when the Browns went public. They were a little bit different, right? So they said, "We are a family that has adult women. We don't do child brides. We don't have that. We don't have arranged marriages," which Kody now claims today that he was pressured in marrying these women regardless. So in their media and on the show, despite that they were admitting to having multiple marriages and Kody was admitting to using Meri to lure women into their family. All of them said it was about whatever all of them admitted on the show that it was about, their faith. Well, after that article came out and the investigation began, they did look at the family and Kody was seen to have committed the act of bigamy. However, they were going to do ongoing investigations into if any other crimes associated with polygamy were connected, like welfare fraud or bankruptcy fraud or abuse, spousal abuse or child abuse. Instead of waiting it out, obviously, and seeing what would happen, they fled Utah. Some will argue the reason why they fled was because Christine had recently declared bankruptcy. Meri and Kody had declared bankruptcy in 2005, and Janelle had declared bankruptcy in 1998. They had been racking up a lot of debt. Using the bankruptcy system to discharge this debt and having an investigation would put in shine a big light on their financials. It would also shine a light onto their relationships and how they're raising their children. We do know that around 2008, Meri was accused by some of Christine's kids of a / use. It was before Robyn came into the family that there was some sort of fight between Meri and Christine about how she decided to handle the kids. And that fight was what ultimately ended their friendship and their relationship with sister wives. So there was issues going on in the family, with child allegations of abuse, and they left, and they didn't let any of the kids get interviewed. They never actually met with the police. And the police were never able to do a full investigation because they were gone. Now there's arguments on whether or not there is actual meat to this investigation. It was the threat was there, whether or not they would be arrested, they never were. But they did run from the law when they decided to go public. Meri was working at this organization called Youth Care of Utah. Timeline is the show goes public September 26, 2010. They start interviewing in New York on September 27th and 28th. Utah police are in. Lehi announced an investigation on September 28th. By October 5th, Meri had been fired by her employer. On the show, they saw Meri admitting to all kinds of behavior to help Kody, and in an interview, she's admitting to being a legal wife, allowing her husband to take in all these women, basically approving of it, and Kody calls her the bait. Police say that they've had a better picture, and she files as they decide to sue the state of Utah in 2011. In this, she actually shares more information about what went down on that day when she was fired. She said, "My family had lived for years in contact with state officials who were aware that we were a plural family." The day after the first episode aired on Sister Wives on TLC, Lehigh City Police Department publicly announced that our family was under investigation under the bigamy statute and were subject to prosecution for our plural family structure. They just said they were doing an investigation. What followed were public statements from prosecutors reaffirming that the state viewed my family as felons and that we were committing criminal acts by living as a plural family. These statements and the very public investigation had an immediate, continuing, and negative impact on my family and myself. She goes into saying how her parents were asked if their kids asked if they were going to go to jail. She speaks about the possibility of having to deal with the children not being with their parents, she says. "In my case, I was fired due to the criminal investigation and being labeled a felon due to our family structure. I had worked for Youth Care of Utah for 1 year. I was consistently given high performance ratings, pay raises, and a promotion during my short tenure there. Even after I disclosed my polygamous lifestyle, I was still treated with respect and allowed to continue to pick up other shifts, including those which I acted in the capacity of shift supervisor of a residential treatment facility for children. When we decided to participate in the Sister Wives program, I informed my supervisors and the company management. There was no objection to the show, and I received positive feedback from my coworkers. I was specifically told by my supervisor that everything was fine in the show and my lifestyle would not be a problem. I was put on administrative leave at the beginning of the next regular scheduled day of work, after statements from the prosecutor labeling us criminals. Please double-check this. I'm not sure if they were prosecutors at this point. I think it was the police. The prosecutors hadn't commented at that point on. In October 3rd, 2010, I came to work on a Sunday only to find high-ranking management present, something I had never seen. I was pulled into an office and told that I would be placed on administrative leave until corporate management decided how to handle the situation. Was called into the office on Tuesday, October 5th, and I was told they had called me in to tell me that they had decided to terminate my employment, and I was not working due to administrative leave. I objected because I had been open about my polygamous family structure and the show, but the management made it clear that it was not my polygamous family that motivated my termination. Rather, that management told me it was the fact that I was under criminal investigation and the statements in the media that the state considered me and my family to be committing felonies under state law. Actually were specifically worried about police showing up to the workplace. My employer offered me a severance pay with the condition, if I accepted it, I would never be able to speak of the circumstances regarding my separation. I refused and exchanged money in exchange for my silence. I'd always enjoyed my work at Youth Care of Utah, and I'd always been treated fairly until the day of my suspension and later termination. Even then, I was still treated kindly. In the course of my termination, I have not been able to secure another position for myself. The threat of the prosecution and public statements has a profound impact on the family's health and lifestyle. We moved to Nevada, in hopes of whatever. So Meri subsequently fired on October 5th, 2010 because her boss says they're concerned that the police might show up at their facility. And they are concerned about her being under investigation for a felony and the fact that she is, admitting to committing crimes on television, naturally. If you're working with at-risk youth, that some of them are delinquents and some of them have committed crimes, it would be pretty hypocritical if you are also involved in criminal activity, right? Yes, but there's also some dynamics here with this organization that make it even more sensitive for them getting rid of her. By October 6th, 2010, the Lehigh police say they've completed their investigation and they've sent it over to the DA. So at this point, the Utah County DA gets to decide whether or not they are going to charge Kody with bigamy. Meri says the fact that they have called her a criminal and she is being investigated for felonies is why she gets fired. In a recent live stream on Patreon, McKelty said that the firing also had to do with the fact that the institution or the for-profit treatment facility for kids was concerned about parents complaining about their children being monitored by a woman that actively was in the world of polygamy and the ramifications of having someone associated with a criminal lifestyle monitoring and disciplining kids. What Meri was doing was working in residential care. She was sort of an aide that was there monitoring the kids while they were going through their treatment. She wasn't a mental health care provider, but they had people that were working in the homes, and that meant she was part of the groups that were doing the discipline, and if kids were out of line, she was the one dishing it out. Now the institution had some problem, and Meri Brown wasn't just one of them. They had a lot of problems. And Youth Care of Utah. It was owned by a company named Aspen Education, and they had a conglomerate of groups of these homes across multiple states where they were for profit. They were featured on Dr. Phil. They were promoting get better behavioral modification for people that are acting out. Some of the kids that were going here were severely mentally ill. Others were dealing with delinquencies. Others were going to these programs in lieu of going to juvenile detention. Some of the kids were being sent there by their parents because they didn't know what to do with them. The marketing of these facilities was making parents feel like if they didn't get help, they were going to end up dead. It's all very unfortunate. Behavioral modification programs have come under a lot of scrutiny because of where their origins are from and the fact that the kids are basically being brainwashed with a system of following checks and balances. They're denied rights. They're denied access to calls with their parents. The facility has the capacity to put them in isolation, allowed to use physical holds and restraints, and there's been a lot of abuse and neglect that's been reported at facilities like this. Well, in 2004, a teenager said that she had been abducted from her home and placed into a 14-bed lockdown facility in Draper. This is where Meri worked. Federal judge to release her, arguing it violates her constitutional rights to liberty, speech, and privacy. She petitioned the judge for immediate release from Youth Care of Utah, where she had been since August of that year. She said that her mother had paid a large sum of money to have her teenager taken from her home and put in this facility after she was expelled from high school. The attorney said, "The whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, is an outrage." Thomas Burton, Basic the attorney. Basically, we felt like it was unconstitutional to hire someone from out of state to spirit a teenager away to lockdown, simply because they do not like what they are doing. Burton claims that the teenager's mother consented to place her daughter in the program on the recommendation of an independent educational consultant connected with youth care. Parents were getting like parents were referring one another, and they were getting money off of their children's treatment by recommending other parents do what they were doing. And there was incentive for them to recruit their friends to send their kids. And they would send these companies in to kidnap the kids in the middle of the night. Instead of treatment, they said that she was cut off from the world. put in a place where they are, incarcerated against their will, without their consent, for dubious treatment of a clandestine, unidentified and unconfirmed nature. He tried to visit with the teenager and was turned away. A licensed marriage and family therapist from California who knows Utterman has had her letters returned. The therapist, Elizabeth Feldman, is one who brought the petition on the teenager's behalf, saying that she was prepared to accept her in her home upon her release. The restrictions are not unusual if it's the parent's enrollment agreement that specifies the nature of the contact the child has and with whom they're treating her like she had been charged with a crime. This was also associated with the Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs. So there was a girl calling for violation of her liberties in 2004. That happens in 2004. There's a lawsuit filed later in 2008-9 or because a boy named Brendan passed away in the facility in 2007 due to a medical condition. He woke up in the middle of the night. He had incontinence. He couldn't control his bladder and other parts of his body. And instead of getting him medical care and medical help and calling a doctor, they forced him to carry his mattress to an isolated room. And then he had to sleep on the floor. They didn't give. They didn't call anyone. No one called the nurse. When they go in the morning to get him, he's dead, and he was dead from a bowel obstruction, and had he gotten the proper care, he would have survived. Initially, 2 of their para-residents that were working people that have the position like Meri had were arrested for child neglect and abuse. They were later cleared of those charges. But this institution was placed on a suspension by the state, the Department of Human Services, and they were having to go through all of these different every so many days doing inspections. They put the facility on probation, and they cited operators for providing inadequate medical care to a 14-year-old boy. Disciplinary action against them was part of a settlement reached between the facility and the lawyers for the Human Services Office of Licensing. They were not fined, and they're free to accept new clients. But he died from a bowel, twisted, and cut off the blood supply to a small intestine. He had been suffering from vomiting, diarrhea, and they failed to contact a nurse. So they were put on probation with their licensing, and for a period were not allowed to take in new clients. And then they had to go through extensive probationary steps to get back in good standing. This same facility also, according to the CEO of Unsilenced, who I spoke to today, Mary Applegate, told me they also practiced conversion therapy. So children that would come there if they were LGBTQ, plus their parents might send them because they're having same-sex attraction or they are having gender dysphoria, and they were forcing kids to basically modify their behavior in order to stop being gay or to stop being transgender, and it's abusive. On top of that, this child that died was autistic, and he had Asperger's, which now is called autism. And so they were saying that they could treat children with autism through behavior modification, which doesn't follow science at all. It was all just a way for them to make money off the children and to basically con parents to send either their facilities to make money, and then once their kids are treated terribly. These programs told parents that their children were manipulative and that anything that they were doing was manipulation, and that if they didn't get a hold of the manipulation, their children were going to end up dead. When parents were asked to do assessments on their website back in 2009, their questions included: do they have problems with anger? Are they dealing with traumatic events or changes in their life? Abuse, divorce, death. Have they had changes in behavior or mood? Are they sad, angry, or withdrawn? Have they exhibited depressive symptoms? Had problems dating along with others? Do you suspect they're using drugs? Have they disregarded family rules and parental guidance? Has your child been able to escape consequence due to the ability to manipulate people and situations? Have they intentionally frightened others, made threatening statements, implied that they may be a plan for violent or suicidal behavior? Implied that they have identified a target for violence, been destructive to property. Some of the reasons parents were sending their kids there were literally because they weren't listening to the rules at their house. According to their website from the web archives from 2009, they admitted that these programs were not utilizing government funding and no insurance was involved. So it says many times students admitted to youth care are not happy to be here and may be brought by escort. We do not utilize any government funding sources. This means students at youth care are neither court-adjudicated students, nor are they students whose families are no longer involved. Parents place their students directly or with assistance from clinical professionals, educational consultants, insurance companies, or school districts. They would be treating girls that had become pregnant, were running away people that were not compliant, self-destructive, irritable, having family problems, having body image problems, dealing with attachment issues, sending kids with learning disabilities, attention problems, impulsive behaviors, poor self-esteem, poor learning skills, running away, acting out sexually. Other diagnoses they treat were depression, body dysmorphia, bipolar, oppositional defiant disorder, reactive attachment disorder, Asperger's, attention deficit disorder, thought disorder, substance abuse and dependency, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Unlike a normal, not-for-profit system where a child might go to a hospital for inpatient care, in this system they are not given a discharge date and they have to go through what's called behavior modification, meaning they have to basically go through a point system. And if they can't get through the point system, they're held there indefinitely. And they don't necessarily address why someone is acting a certain way. Instead, they're saying this behavior is wrong. You can't do this. And I'm going to take points away. I'm going to take privileges away. They will put them in isolation. They will use physical restraints, even though they're claiming that they have psychiatrists there and psychologists there. Most of the people that work at these facilities do not have any licenses, don't have any education, and are basically just siloing these kids through a brainwashing process of do this or else. And the only way to get out is to finish the levels, and there's 3 levels to get out. There was recently a documentary on Netflix that covered Called the Program, which goes into great detail about how this works. And it's really, truly deplorable, to be honest. It doesn't address a lot of the specific issues that are causing behaviors and mental health diagnosis, are treated like the child is evil and bad instead of addressing the specific issues happening with the child. And it's because the kid isn't being obedient and they want kids to obey. That's their goal, obedience. And it's ingrained within the Mormon culture in Utah that these types of programs exist according to the Meri Applegate or Meg Applegate from Unsilenced. So this was where Meri was working. She's fired. Not because of polygamy. She's fired because of a criminal investigation. She's fired because she's involved in a criminal underlien world. And while it might have been ok for them to cover it up when it wasn't public, once she went public and everyone knew that she was working with at-risk youth, there's privacy concerns for Meri. She could potentially be exposing intimate details about children that she works with. There's issues with police showing up at the facility. There are issues with Meri's involvement in being the bait and luring kids and luring women into marriages with her husband. You have to remember that polygamy during this time was all about men recruiting women from outside of their churches because they didn't have enough women. So even though she's saying, I want to work with at-risk youth, anyone Meri becomes close to could potentially become someone she's interested in having Kody marry, and in Kody could potentially be interested in marrying. And when Kody was, 25 or so, he was interested in a girl that was 17 and waited until she was 18 till he was going to marry her. It's just not a good look for them to be involved with her when they have all these other issues. Kids dying, kids being held against their will, being put on probation, abuse, neglect, all kinds of problems in the system. It's all for profit. They have multiple places, multiple facilities closing down. Laws have been passed in Utah to restrict the abuse that can happen in these facilities, to reduce isolation, prevent these hold from happening, and to get rid of the for-profit aspect of it. They don't care if a child actually has a problem. They will take any kid as long as a parent will pay, and then they'll abuse the hell out of kids and keep costs low in order to make the most amount of money. And then parents get incentives when they refer their friends to the programs, and then the kids end up being traumatized. And that's why organizations like Unsilent exist. And that's where Meri was working. And that's where Meri wanted to work, having grown up in polygamy. She would be desensitized to abuse. She would be desensitized to what is abuse, what's not abuse. She would have cognitive dissonance around abuse. She might accept abuse that is unknowingly because she doesn't recognize that it is abuse. She's very naive, and what they do there might be normal to her when it's in fact very abnormal. It is normal for a child that's a teenager to question authority, to not be obedient, to have rage issues. That's a part of growing up. They look at that as a character flaw instead of a learning opportunity. Knowing how Kody has managed the conflict in his family and how the family has managed conflict, and makes me wonder how they managed and navigated their own children when they were acting out, and whether behavior modification was what they did in their homes. I have zero clue. You know, it's Kody has demonstrated that obedience is what he wants, and that's what these programs teach. It's very disconcerting. So having taken a dive into this world, does it surprise me that she was working at a facility like this, given her background? No. Does it surprise me that she was fired, given what the facility was facing? No. Is that the facility's fault for firing her? No. Is she the victim for getting fired? No. She's the one that made the choice to go public. She's the one that decided to put it all out there by putting it all out there. She put herself at risk. She put her kids at risk. She put the children that she's helping at risk that she thinks she's helping. The facility is putting themselves at risk because they got a staff member that's now under criminal investigation and labeled a felon under the law. And whether she liked it or not, that's what her life was. They couldn't change the law. They never changed the law. Still a crime. They weren't the victims of getting fired. They weren't the victims of prosecution. They weren't the victims of police. They were the ones playing the victim when the real victims were their kids and the people that are trapped in these cults. Police were not the bad guys. The employer here, is a bad employer. They're doing bad things to kids, but they weren't wrong to fire her. They had their own problems they had to deal with, and she was just a stain that was going to make them look terrible. And now Meri is out there helping adults, and if this is how she helps people, I would not want to be a part of Worthy Of. I'm just saying I want to thank the CEO from Unsilenced for speaking with me today and helping me better understand the dynamics of these groups in Utah. You can check out their website and make sure to follow them on Instagram if you want to learn more about their advocacy work. What are your thoughts about her getting fired and the places that she worked? And how do you think in the home they were managing conflict with their kids? Tell me what your thoughts are. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click on the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.